God bless. This is NFL-Moneyball, brought to you by NFL Extended Strategic Principles, found on the web at NFL-ESP.com. I am your host, Mark Anthony DeBello. For more information on me and this program, you may go to markanthonydebello.com and click on the Sports tab. Today is Sunday, January the 17th. The divisional round of the NFL playoffs has just completed. So in this half-hour program of NFL Extended Strategic Principles, I'm going to cover last week's or this recent weekend's games, then project upon the conference finals next week, New England at Denver and Arizona at Carolina, and then even forward into the Super Bowl, although I'll do a telecast prayerfully after the conference championships for the Super Bowl. And again, this program covers the games from our unique perspective of NFL ESP, or Extended Strategic Principles, our premier data product. We actually do the NCAA as well, including football and basketball, and additionally with all the major pro sports, including basketball, baseball, and hockey. We also do PGA, ESP, EPL, which is the European Premier League ESP, and we also do NASCAR and the NTRA, which is the National Thoroughbred Racing Association. So, having said that, again, we cover the games from the unique perspective of the four aspects of NFL ESP and all the ESP data system product consultation services and the media program. And that's from the spiritual, the motivational, X's and O's, which is typically play design. But now with the Rams being back in LA, it actually includes stadium design as well. And then lastly, the strategic, which incorporates our exclusive use of our power rankings and our unique number called the power spread. And again, Las Vegas has a version of this spread that they get the number from us. But as it applies to a head coach or a team making the most probable and predictive based on a percentage basic strategy decisions, you want to go to the power spread and refer to that index or number as we do in the unique system that we've developed, as compared to the Las Vegas spread, because that number is, when it's disseminated and distributed, it's biased so that the public and people who play games, the monetary mindset, and I use the word invest in games, or they put their money on their games. I don't use the B and G word. Don't believe in it. Believe in the integrity of the game. But again, this data is highly undervalued, misunderstood, and is the most accurate and truthful and effective and productive data. But again, when that number comes out, their version of the spread in Las Vegas, they distribute a biased number, an altered number, so that the people who put money on games will lose, and then the media, who's wrong 90% of the time, they'll move the public opinion, which is wrong 90% of the time, and then that number becomes skewed and biased and more of a barometer, an index to what people are putting down financially, when the pure number is actually the most truthful and the most accurate. And as you've heard me say before, we use the 4 Ps of the NFL ESP system, which is power, prophecy, prediction, and production. Again, been proven to increase a team's win production by at least 10 to 15% minimum in pro sports and 10 to 25% minimum in NCAA. So, having said that, in the first 5 minutes here, I usually like to speak of some cultural or societal issue as it relates to pro sports, or in this case in the NFL ESP program. With regards to pro football, I'm recording this program very early because I have a lot on my mind regarding the games, some insights I can assure you've probably never heard before, We just recorded an NBA ESP broadcast I encourage you to listen to, I think from January the 17th or 16th, the day of the games with the Spurs playing the Cavaliers, which I think is very insightful. That's just a 12-minute sample of that broadcast. But in regards to NFL ESP, I want to go over this week's games. I again hear the media, who again is 90% inaccurate in their assessment. I even have to admit I made a mistake this week, which is a rarity, sort of a mistake. I'll explain it when we recap the games. But again, from their perspective, I respect that they have a job, but it'd be nice to hear some other angle as to the way games are analyzed instead of what I just hear, which is, basically the same. If you're on offense, you got to score more. If you're on defense, you got to hold them. I mean, we know that. I want to hear some analysis, or at least analysis that reveals more of the truth and what the outcome of the game is actually going to be. So having said that, the one thing I want to note about NFL football, which you heard me say this is the closest season I've seen this year, and it proved that way this weekend with some exciting games, is that pro football especially, is really a sum-all game, which means it doesn't really matter how you start or finish, just the total is the total at the end. It's very predictable in the sense that it really holds true to the number, and you could be a team like Seattle who's down 31-0 and close that gap in that game. For teams, and I heard Carolina in the post-game press conference talking about we got to keep the pedal to the metal and hold them down. Well, you're not going to win 64-0. Typically. I mean, it's, you got started early, you were motivated, you're at home, you had some rest. Seattle was playing their third straight road game. You got really motivated, you played hard, you got some turnovers in the beginning, and you built a strong lead. Doesn't mean you can expect to keep the lead. You can try, they did, but they shouldn't be disappointed in a sense or try to wonder or analyze, and the announcers too, how they let Seattle back in. They didn't let Seattle back in. It's just they started more quickly for the reasons I mentioned. It's a sum-all game. The game isn't over till the clock says 0-0-0. The statistics will prove out and will out in the end. The same probability that exists basically at the beginning of the game is the same probability that exists at the end of the game. Surely I know you don't play the games on paper and you have to play them out and different things can happen, but it amazes me how, philosophically a lot, especially players, you can't expect them to know everything, but even coaches, can't quite understand, the nature of the games or give an erroneous description of how they work spiritually especially, and then including, philosophically or scientifically. But anyway, having said that, let me go over the games of this week. And I noted, when I spoke of the media, I knew I was in trouble when I did analyze one game last week. I thought Seattle would beat Carolina. I knew it would be a close game. It was. Statistically, in fact, if it wasn't for the turnovers, Seattle would have won. They had more total yardage. By our turnover chart, they lost 11 points. A Kuechly interception for a TD equated to 7, and then another interception by Russell Wilson later in the game he threw equated to 4. So with that 11-point differential, and then including Carolina at home, who gets home calls, and I mentioned that the home field advantage is 4 to 7 points. I saw it really across the board a lot in games this weekend. The New England game, it was apparent there. It was apparent in the Arizona game. Even some in the Denver game, not quite as much. They get other home field advantage there for their altitude and different factors there, and especially Pittsburgh being in a record 4th straight road game. A record in the sense I've never seen a team. I can't recall a team having 4 straight road games. And it even happened in the Seattle-Carolina game. Seattle tired having their 3rd straight road game. They played admirably and really should have beat what I've always said this season is an overrated Carolina. But anyway, so having said that, with home field advantage, at 4 to 7 points, I saw that really come into play this week, and I saw a lot of coaches who really could have used NFL ESP, not only the index, the number, the power spread to help them improve their results, but just surely across the board for the season win 2 to 3 additional games. I just did an analysis on a professional team and saw 2 games we definitely would have overturned if they had used our system and our information. It's just really clear cut to me. And again, as I said, this index, this power spread is most underestimated, underused, undervalued, and misunderstood, analytical, statistical data in all of pro sports. It's not an opinion. But the point I was trying to make earlier about the media is I knew I was in trouble when I heard Rob Riggles, it's just an affront that these comedian guys get these platforms and can give winners, and they're not even funny, or try to give winners. Pick Seattle. I said, you know what? I think too much of the public is thinking Seattle as well. They're the quote-unquote hot team. And Carolina, and actually you'll see this periodically, you'll see a team from the Las Vegas Standard, power spread, that's not really a word, but power spread favorite of 3 points, and they're actually the underdog. They're just getting that 3 points basically for being at home, even though home field is, as I noted, 4-7, but they're actually what I call a favorite underdog, or a favorite underdog, and that was the case with Carolina. And again, they are a turnover-heavy team. I'm not discrediting their victory. They had to go out in the field. They won. They played Seattle basically even the whole game, for the most part. The stats were very close, and all the stats were close despite all the scores this weekend. And as I said, this is the closest season on record I've seen statistically, and it turned out to be that way. Pittsburgh, just lost to Denver by 7. Green Bay lost by 6 in one of the greatest games you'll ever see. And Kansas City actually statistically had more, I think, first downs and yardage than New England, and actually played New England even in that game from most of the data. And New England only won that game by 7. But again, that was New England definitely gets 7 points at home, as I mentioned, and they did. So let me go over the games, and some other thoughts, and it'll shed some light on how NFL ESP works. And then again, I'll make sure I cover the other games, the games coming up, and then devote even a little more time to fantasy since we only got a couple games this weekend. So let me go back to the first game of the weekend and start with New England, Kansas City. As noted, New England gets a lot of home field advantage. I'm looking at the numbers from that game. And again, we had a 0 balance on our scale, the way I look at the game. So, in Kansas City, as I said, had more yardage than New England. I'm looking at the stats now as I drum it up. They had 27 first downs to 21 and 38 more total yards. The reason Kansas City typically loses, and you heard me say this, but last week's broadcast, is Andy Reid is too conservative. So he kicked 2 field goals early on. He probably should only have kicked 1 and gone for a touchdown and another in the first field goal and would have converted. Again, I don't have all the play-by-play in front of me, but I just recall from watching the game, Kansas City shouldn't have settled for field goals. But mostly Kansas City doesn't realize they're a power spread underdog going into New England. And Andy Reid, Coach Reid, with all due respect, calls a very, sorry, God bless me, calls a very status quo, simplistic basic strategy game. He calls it very conservative. He's not aware of what the power spread differential is in his game. He approaches every game as if he's got a 50-50 chance to win, and then, makes the most typical leaning toward conservative basic strategy calls. That's why he didn't win in Philadelphia, and that's why he's not doing better with Kansas City. Kansas City is actually a very good team. Actually, as I noted, power rated right up there with the top 2 or 3 AFC teams. And I'll give you a similar team in the NFC, Minnesota, same way. They don't make enough aggressive basic strategy decisions or manufacture points, at least using our NFL ESP system. So that, for the most part, is the reason. And again, the home field advantage calls New England is going to get. And actually, I'm looking. Kansas City had 37 minutes of time of possession next to 22, but that happens a lot with New England because they throw so much. But anyway, so having said that, as we projected, we did say New England would win. I thought it would be a close game. It was. I did have Kansas City picked a couple games earlier, but said it'd be kind of a toss-up in New England. And you heard me? Can you just go back to the NFL ESP broadcast and you'll hear me say that they're going to have to overcome that home field advantage. And they did not. And so anyway, so that ends, Kansas City's season. In the next game, Sunday or Saturday, was the Saturday night battle between Arizona and Green Bay. Great game, obviously. We called that basically just about correctly, exactly as it came out. Arizona, I admit, did get some home calls. The one thing I'll note about Arizona, and I've said this to an NFL coach in the past, wide receivers, and I can see this in Arizona. Carson Palmer, I think, when he was with, I think, the Raiders or whatever team he was with, where didn't do well. I said, you put him on a decent team, he's going to do great because he's the most accurate passer in the league, if not one of the most. And he's just, showing that this year. Last year he showed it, but he got hurt. But, to discredit him in a sense, one negative is he seemed a little, whether it's his finger that hurts or he's a little gun shy, whatever the case, he wasn't very accurate. Not like I've seen him in the past, and it really almost cost Arizona that game. In addition to that, the wide receivers tend to drop a lot of passes, and usually you'll see this in wide receivers that are faster, wide receivers who might have more athletic ability, if you will. But to me, I would always want a possession receiver. I'm not playing. I'm just going to say this. God bless. It's just, well, I won't say it, but either way, I don't think that the Arizona wide receivers are as intelligent as they could be necessarily, or as, in relation to other wide receivers, because I used to play wide receiver in college, and, I'm blessed to be highly intelligent. Intelligence leads to concentration, concentration to focus, and when you drop passes, it's really a lack of intelligence. It leads to the lack of concentration, a lack of focus. You might be able to get open, you might be able to run fast, but you got to catch the ball. You're a wide receiver, or even a tight end. Your job, your number one job, if the ball's being thrown to you, is to catch it. If not, it's to get, block. I mean, surely I can understand you want speed to stretch the field, and whatnot, but I could see the lack of intelligence and knowing the wide receiving core of the Cardinals. The only wide receiver who might not fall into that category is Larry Fitzgerald, and he was our top fantasy wide receiver, and he had a monster day. And you could see the Cardinals, sort of dependently going to him, realizing he's not going to make these drops. He's a bright man, and if you heard him speak, he's very bright. He's got, his father, I guess, is a reporter, so he must be a pretty bright man. I know he does, community work. I think he's a Christian, so God bless him. He's the exception. But the other wide receivers, you can't drop passes. But anyway, so that was basically what I had seen, in the Green Bay Arizona game. And if you listen to our analysis again, we were pretty much spot on that one. The first game on Sunday, I have to admit I was a little fatigued, so I fell asleep a little bit during the second quarter of the game. But Carolina got out to, again, knowing they're an underdog in a sense. Again, I still think they're an overrated team. They did get a couple turnovers in the beginning, a turnover for a touchdown that, if you just simply look at the score, it made a 7-point difference. It would have been a 31-31 game. But Seattle had to travel many miles to go their third straight road game, and they had to go back east. That fatigue factor, I know, cost them. Whether it's your intellect, you get a little fatigued mentally, whatever. You make a bad decision here or there. But again, it's a sum-all game. Carolina did what they should have done. They got out to a 31-0 lead. They played well. They're a solid team, but they're an overrated team. They're not more highly power-rated than Seattle. But again, because of the turnovers, we had a -11 in our, ratio between turnovers and home field advantage in that game. Seattle would have won. Now, I'm not making excuses. Carolina was, in a sense, the only underdog that won this week from a Vegas perspective. And like I said, in games where there's 4 games, you're typically going to see 3 favorites win, 1 underdog win outright. And then when the 3 favorites win, one of those will end up covering with their version of the spread. Green Bay did that in their game. New England won as a favorite. And then basically the Denver-Arizona game was a push. Some people could have gotten 6.5, and or some other people 7.5, and had a win or a loss in that game. But basically, it was a push. So knowing that then Carolina was really the only underdog that won, even though they were actually giving 2.5 points at home. Again, I think a lot of people played Seattle, and I have to admit, I thought Seattle should have or could have or would have won that game. So I wasn't perfect. I didn't see that. Or I didn't, I started thinking too much like the public, and I, failed to realize that. But again, a couple turnovers, and I might be singing a different tune. But I'm not making excuses. I'm surely not perfect. But again, in that game, you'll see that live underdog, if you will, from a Vegas perspective, win one game, and it's normally because of turnovers, and they're not expected to in a way that was, Carolina, because again, Carolina to me is just an overrated team. They're now plus 85 points on the season with regards to turnover margin, and I think that's clearly number one in the NFL. And that's how you get to be, 16-1 at this juncture, I guess. But again, their one-loss record is not truly indicative of their power spread ranking, their power ranking. And there's actually, I'm looking here, 4 games that could have been overturned because of turnovers. But again, turnovers are part of the game in the sense that if you create them, you deserve to win by them. Again, I don't see Carolina beating Arizona. I don't want to totally, review that game yet, but they're not good enough to win the Super Bowl. I mean, even if they get there against Denver, they'll definitely lose. If they get there against New England, I find it very hard to believe New England can repeat. So I have to think that Denver's going to get there and beat Carolina, or Denver's going to get there against Arizona. But again, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. So rather than do that, let me go on to the next game here. Basically, that wraps up the Seattle-Carolina game. The other game, the last game here, was Pittsburgh and Denver. Again, Pittsburgh, you saw them fatigue in the fourth quarter, with the road, being on the road 4 straight games and having to be in Mile High. Denver was really tough. I give both teams credit for attempting a couple of fourth downs in that game, especially Pittsburgh, who had to be aggressive and overcome, a 7-point deficit. I heard Phil Simms speak about the game, and geez, every time I hear him, it makes me cringe. I don't know if he's going to say the Lord's name in vain, if he's going to say, gee, damn it, if he's, or he's going to give just some poor analysis. I mean, he's so self-righteous. I mean, I'm only self-righteous because I speak for God, okay? And I give God all the credit, give God all the glory. I try to speak for him, so, I'm an idiot if it wasn't for God. But Phil Simms, I don't believe he's a man of God, and he's always wrong. He always agrees with every call the ref makes. He always agrees that he was going to make that call, whether they go for it or not. Very seldom, if ever, do I ever hear him confess he made a mistake or an error, and he makes so many of them. It's just ridiculous. It's just annoying. But anyway, and I regret that he has to do Super Bowl 50 as a media. Oh, I don't want to listen to him. But anyway, I also saw, speaking of media, on ESPN, they've got, and I can see these relationships coming together. I mean, Lord knows I wished I worked for ESPN, but now I don't. It's probably a near impossibility because of A, my Christianity, and B, I've seen them at the MIT Sports Analytics Conference, and I can see the networking that they're doing. But the people that they have on there doing, analytics, predictions, and whatever they call them, they had a woman on there now who just stumbled and stuttered over her speech, didn't know what she was talking about, basically, was reading some script, and I don't know what kind of analytical data or analysis this female is giving. And then this other kid, Jeff Ma, who I've seen there, these guys aren't prognosticators. I've been doing this for 45 years, not only studying the games from an NFL ESP perspective, but again, the people, one of the guys who had my formula, the formula I use, has a $20 million jet because he's a Vegas guy, okay? I mean, these guys in Las Vegas, they know this information. I don't know where these guys get off calling themselves analytical experts. I mean, they might know some things, but, their version of analytics, which I know very well, is probably only about 25% of the game and 25%, I'm not going to call it inaccurate, but effective. So anyway, God bless them. But anyway, so having said that, again, another exciting game in Pittsburgh and Denver. So having said that, let me go forth and look at this week's games and give you some analysis on those from a basic strategy perspective, or at least maybe something unique. We've only got about 6 minutes left here. So I'm looking at New England at Denver. Again, all these games are close. The early spread releases from a Vegas perspective are all, Denver's favored by a field goal. I'm sorry, New England's favored by a field goal to home dog Denver, and Carolina's a field goal favorite over Arizona. Statistically speaking, from the power ranking perspective, clearly we have the top power ranked teams being Denver and Arizona. Okay? I basically said that early on at the beginning of the season. The change to Coach Kubiak. Oh, I think I wanted to mention something about some new NFL coaches, but I talked about that last week. I'm sorry. Denver and Arizona. New England's in the top maybe 5, maybe I forget where we had them, 5th or so. Carolina, like I said, is probably 8th, ninth, or 10th. They're just got there from turnover. So statistically speaking, power ranking-wise, Denver at home and Arizona, even though they're on the road, are clearly the two best teams to me. Now, are they going to win? That's a different story. I would surely have rather seen Osweiler in there for Denver, power rated them a little bit more higher with Denver. I think Denver as a home underdog should actually beat New England. Um, Denver dropped a lot of passes. They sort of have the same situation that I mentioned in Arizona with receivers, although I do give Emmanuel Sanders some props. He actually is probably the best receiver on that team. Thomas drops way too many passes. So do the other guys. I give Coach Kubiak. They're two great coaches, Kubiak and Coach Belichick, obviously. But again, from our data, Denver's the higher ranked team. But again, and if you're getting points at home in Denver, I mean, I can see Denver beating New England, and that's who I would lean to in that game. In the Arizona-Carolina game, Carolina's going to have to produce turnovers. If Carson Palmer's off the way he was throwing last week, Carolina can actually win that game. They get a couple interceptions or something, or tip balls, because these Arizona receivers aren't paying attention or whatever. They're not fully focused. And and I see this with a lot of wide receivers. I don't know why they don't stretch out to catch more. You get this when you get a lot of speedy wide receivers. They want to just run through the ball, and they don't stretch out and just concentrate on making the catch. They'd rather think about, just running. I mean, I saw a lot of balls off fingertips this weekend of these guys that should be catching these passes. Jump, stretch out, do everything you can to catch. It's better to catch a 30-yard catch diving than it is to have a 30-yard an incompletion because you thought you could have run through it and got it in a touchdown. I mean, if I was an NFL quarterback, I mean, I'd be pulling hair out of my head. But anyway, having said that, Carolina is a home favorite. There's no way Carolina should be giving points to Arizona. They're going to really need to get some egregious home calls there. They're going to have to get turnovers. They're going to have to. That's how they're probably going to have to manufacture points. They call Riverboat Ron Rivera. I respect him as a coach, but he's really not that. He doesn't take that many chances, believe it or not. Not enough for the way his team is ranked. If he can make take a fourth down chance, that would really benefit their team. Because really, Arizona is the better team. Now, typically what you'll see in the wild card, you've got the 1 and 2 seeds in both these conference games. Typically what you'll see one favorite win and one underdog win. So Carolina being the favorite, again, I think the situation is the same. They're an underdog. They're a favored underdog, or an underdog favorite. Put it that way. They're not the better team. They're the underdog in that game. I know Denver's definitely the underdog. So I would lean toward Denver, and then I think I misspoke a little bit about what I just said. Because, either way, I mean, I believe the two best teams are Denver and Arizona. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Denver and Carolina. If they do something to upset Arizona. But again, I don't see it. I guess I should stand corrected because I'm not really looking over the stats here. And if I'm discombobulated, I sincerely apologize. And I just slammed the meat. That's probably God getting back at me. I just know who the better teams are. Are they going to be the two Super Bowl teams? Again, I think you're going to see a surprise. I don't know who the surprise is going to be, but the live underdog is Denver. But so is Arizona. Listen, in this season you could see two underdogs. So anyway, that's my analysis for now on those games. I might add something later in writing. From a fantasy perspective, you're going to have to dig deep on some of these teams. The winning, you got to pick the highest scoring team of all four. Obviously, I would rank them all by points. What game has the highest score? I think Arizona, Carolina's got a better chance to be high scoring. The AFC, I think, is a better conference. You've got your two better teams, New England and Denver. That, I think, will be an under game. More so, New England, they're going to throw with Brady. But if Denver wins, they're going to win because of defense. I think Arizona, Carolina's got a greater potential to be a higher scoring game, especially with Tyrann Mathieu having been out for Arizona. So I wouldn't, and I also realized last week whoever Patrick Peterson is covering isn't really going to get any balls thrown or caught. So that would probably be, you want to go against Ted Ginn for Carolina. and you want to go against, down to their third or fourth wideout. And again, the team that wins usually has a better running game. You saw Carolina do it with Jonathan Stewart this weekend. The team that, I'm not saying to take Jonathan Stewart this weekend. I would stick again with David Johnson for Arizona. So, anyway, there's a little bit of fantasy advice. I'm sorry I'm out of time. I'm sorry I got a little sloppy at the end of the week here. I'm tired too. So, listen, I want to appreciate all of you. I do appreciate all you listening. Thank you. This has been NFL Moneyball, brought to you by NFL ESP. I've been your host, Mark Anthony DeBello. Please go to NFL-ESP.com or markanthonydebello.com for more information. Thanks, and God bless you.